Prime Minister Narendra Modi there at the Palam Technical Air Base, laying a wreath at the mortal remains of General Bipin Rawat, his wife Madhulika Rawat, and 11 others who died in this tragic crash that happened in Coonoor in Tamil Nadu. The Prime Minister laying that wreath and paying his last respects. And now will offer flowers as his Shraddhanjali for all the others. And let's not forget, it's not just General Rawat and his wife. There were 11 others, from Brigadier Leader to Lieutenant Colonel Harjinder Singh, the Air Force junior officers who were there as part of the convoy. All of them are being remembered in this solemn occasion. The entire country has come together at this grieving moment to be with the families of General Rawat. He's got 2 young daughters, both of whom are there. The family of Brigadier Leader, the families of all the other fallen men in that tragic air crash in Coonoor in Tamil Nadu. And I take heart from the visuals that we saw earlier today from Sulur, from Coonoor, from Coimbatore, where local people, ordinary people, had come out onto the streets, lined up the streets where the mortal remains were being taken in different ambulances, and were showering flower petals on these ambulances, were saying Veera Vanakkam, which means salute to the brave. It's a heart-rending moment when ordinary Indians, and many things divide us, but this is one thing that unites us. In the face of such tragedy, in the face of such adversity, ordinary people have come forth and shown what holds us together, what unifies us as a country, as a nation, as a people. And Prime Minister Modi will be acutely aware of the solemnness of this moment, the deep grief of this moment, and yet at the same time, the resolve that the show must go on, the resolve that the institution needs to be preserved. The Prime Minister there bowing his head in deep respect for all the fallen men. That includes General Rawat, his wife, Brigadier Leader, now the Prime Minister consoling the families of the people who fell, giving them whatever possible few words of condolences, of comfort in this hour of grief, sharing with them this moment when they need a shoulder to lean on, when they need all the support, the mental, emotional support that is required. Spare a thought for General Rawat's family, 2 young daughters. They've lost both their mother and their father. No child will have to go through that, losing both parents at one go. The Prime Minister there speaking with each and every one of the families, extending a word of comfort, a word of succor in this hour of grief for these families. All of them united by grief, but all of them united also by the thought and the knowledge that there are 1 billion Indians who are with them tonight. There are 1 billion Indians whose thoughts and prayers these families are. We seek strength to these families, that they be able to face this tremendous tragedy. Like I said, no young children should have to go through this fate, should have to go through this phase of losing their parents. In the case of General Rawat's 2 young daughters, they've lost both their mother and father. The Prime Minister there condoling the families, and now as he makes his way back to the convoy, to the cavalcade, and back to his residence. In a few moments, we're also expecting the President of India, Ramnath Kovind, to arrive and pay his respects to the fallen. Let me now welcome our guests. This is a very, very difficult moment for anyone who is associated with the forces or their families, or indeed for any ordinary citizen across the country. Let me welcome Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia, former Western Air Command Chief. Dr. Tara Karta will be joining us, former director of the National Security Council Secretariat. Lieutenant General retired Shankar Prasad is former DG Infantry, and Major Dilawar Singh is a defense expert. Will also be joined by Group Captain Amitabh Ranjan, who is a former helicopter pilot of the Mi-17. Let me start with you, Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia. Many questions will be asked and many questions ought to be asked, but now I just want to focus on these pictures. First the Raksha Mantri, then the Prime Minister, in what is an extremely solemn occasion. And I'm sure, Air Marshal, in your long and distinguished service, you've seen many a fellow soldier who's fallen. What do you say to their family members at a time such as this? This would easily be the toughest moment to go through for any soldier. Air Marshal Ahluwalia, if you can hear me, this has to be one of the toughest moments in the life of any soldier, to comfort the family of another brother soldier who has fallen. What do you say in a moment such as this, in an occasion such as this? What are the words of comfort that we can share with the families of General Rawat, Brigadier Lidder, and the others who perished in this tragic accident yesterday? All right, let me ask that question to General Prasad, please. Lieutenant General Shankar Prasad.
Zaka, I just heard your question and I have no answer for this. The answer I can think of and give is, it is the most terrible moment that I'm watching today. My heart and my mind goes to the people whose coffins are lying here. As I perhaps mentioned to you yesterday, I knew the family, I knew General Rawat very well. I not only knew him, I knew his father, I knew his wife, my wife knew his wife, and we were very much close to each other. We were pretty much like a family. And suddenly, to find that he's not there is something that I'm finding it even today to be not believed. I do not know how to express myself to say that he left yesterday morning from his home in Kamaraj Marg. His daughter, who lives with him, said, "Okay, Mom, bye, see you in the evening. Okay, Dad, see you, bye in the evening." And not realizing that by the time the evening comes, they're not going to come back. They've left this world and gone. Can you imagine, Zaka, such a thing happening? A very fit, a very fine person, a very healthy family, and suddenly the house is zero. It's vacated, it's vacant. What has he got in that house left? One daughter and a guard. And a guard that was guarding that house, and the occupant of that house no longer has to guard anybody because that person whom they were guarding is gone in a jiffy. I mean, it's so difficult to imagine such things happening. And for us to lose a CDS who was just evolving the job that he was doing, he was just trying to figure out as to how exactly he can proceed with his task, how to create what he wants to create, how to make sure the government gives and understands what the armed forces require. The job half done. He had committed to the Prime Minister before he was appointed and when he was appointed that within the next 2 to 3 years that the tenure he's going to have, he's going to make sure of A, B and C. And he has not been able to complete it. That's the will of the God. My mind also goes back to a few years again. Zaka, I'm sorry to bring you back there. But soon after Kargil war, when coffins like this used to come, and I was then in service as Director General Infantry, every evening I had to go there, like this particular event that you're witnessing now, and play wreaths there on the coffins of the soldiers and young officers and those who martyred in Kargil. 20, 30, 40 coffins used to be there. It used to be absolutely heartbreaking. Young girls, their husbands dying away. Girls at the age of 25, boys at the age of 30, 27, passing away like this. And it is such a miserable time. I mean, I can't tell you what I saw in 1999, soon after the Kargil war, or during the Kargil war, and now what I'm witnessing today. This is so unprecedented. You can't imagine that the Chief of the Defence Staff coffin is lying in Palam Airport, and the Prime Minister and the President and others are going to pay tributes there. And the young daughter, the young unmarried daughter, who is sitting there, and all what the Prime Minister could say to him, he can do nothing more than that. I'm very sorry, and I really see your grief and words to that effect. But that is not going to make that girl any better.
Yep.
She's going to go back home tonight to an empty house. She's going to go back to a house where her father and mother lived there the previous night are not there. Can she sleep in that house? She won't be able to sleep in that house for days and days and days together. There's a beautiful house, it's beautifully kept, everything is spick and span, and suddenly the owner is gone. I mean, look at the kind of trauma that this girl is going to go through. The other girl as well, she was in Bombay, she never realized that next time I go to Delhi, I'll be going to see his funeral. I mean, it's amazing, Zaka, it's heartbreaking. I really do not know how to express my English language, my Hindi cannot express any better than what I've said. And my feelings are, and it becomes worse because they were so well known to us.
Yeah.
Mrs. Rawat is a dear friend of my wife for the last 25, 30 years, 30 plus years. We have known that Mrs. Rawat when Bipin was a major, and I have known Bipin when he was a captain. He was a major in the Military Operations Directorate, and he did so much work there. I mean, there was a particular incident that we had to send something to the Prime Minister by 5:30, and General Roderick was the Army Chief, and he said that make sure this letter reaches the Prime Minister's hand this evening. And the person who went and did it was Bipin Rawat. He went there and came back and said, yes, the letter has been delivered. You can inform the Chief of the Army Staff that the letter has been delivered as he desired. Now, that's the kind of relationship I've had with him since 1991-92. How can I accept what I'm seeing today?
Okay. Let me also bring in Air Marshal P.S. Ahluwalia. Questions need to be asked and questions will be asked once the dust settles on this tragic accident, Air Marshal Ahluwalia. What happened? Yes, it was inclement weather. Yes, in that particular area of the Nilgiris, we know that, there are very highly localized weather patterns. The weather changes very suddenly, very dramatically. But questions will also be asked about how could this happen to, effectively the person who is the head of the military services in India and his family and, his staff. Air Marshal.
Zaka, aviation is a risky business. Military aviation is even more risky. Every force, the Air Force, takes all the precautions that need to be taken for any aircraft that gets airborne. We've got to get it back in one piece. That is our endeavor. That is our objective. That is our task. So we make sure that the machine is fully fit. It is fully capable of doing its mission and coming back safely. The person in the cockpit, whatever it might be, a fighter aircraft, a helicopter, or a transport aircraft, has to be fully qualified. And he goes through the paces of being fully qualified to take on this task. Once again, mission accomplishment is paramount. To be able to do that, we have to provide the resources for the man in the loop to be able to do it safely. However, the risks are always there. The risks of any machine malfunctioning, the risk of a pilot making a mistake, the risk of getting into weather that was unforeseen, getting into a terrain that becomes very tricky during different parts of the day, different times of the day. So therefore, consider firstly that the aircraft, the MI V5, was a very capable aircraft. It was specially developed and upgraded for VIP carriage. We have about 150 otherwise doing all kinds of missions from the high mountains of the Himalayas down to ONGC operations off the coast of Mumbai and down south beyond Trivandrum, Andaman Nicobar, everywhere. The question is, was it fit? Yes, it was, because every aircraft that gets airborne goes through a very rigorous testing that all systems are go. In the case of VIP aircraft, it is even more. It is more stringent than otherwise. And in this aircraft, very capable, engines were boosted, Engines were super boosted, I would say. Avionics was state of the art. Autopilot was incorporated, and all safety measures and reliability of this aircraft was in fact intact. The pilots
Okay.
fully trained, fully competent, and perhaps the most experienced in their seniority to fly this helicopter. And they get tested very regularly. So therefore, the machine was fit, the pilots were fit. What has happened? That is the question that will be addressed as soon as you are able to recover, which you have recovered, sorry,
Yeah.
from sources I gather that the black box, that is the flight data recorder,
Mhm.
as also the voice recorder, has been recovered. Now the Aircraft Investigation Board will take these flight data recorder and VCR to the base that it took off from, that is Coonoor, and they will try to milk it. Milk it means extract the information in this box. What is the information that you will get? You will get information that would be pertaining to all the systems on board. That means the engine, whether it's okay, it was functioning normally, the fuel flow was all right, engine was not starved, engine pressure was all right. And that is what will be indicated, apart from the other systems working, the autopilot, the flight controls, whether there's anything wrong with them or not.
Mhm.
So that would be indicated. It would also be indicated as to how the pilots were performing, whether doing, the stick movements will be monitored, the vertical up and down, that would be monitored. So it will give you an indication as to what the pilots were doing in the cockpit also. So therefore, it is quite apparent, it is quite very probable, I would say,
Okay.
that we will know the answers, but nobody's going to give you answers tomorrow or day after.
No,
or
no,
day
fair
after.
enough. Fair enough.
But we will be able to get it.
There is a court of
black
inquiry
box-
and a very competent air marshal that's been instituted. So hopefully he will get to the bottom of what exactly happened. They say in the forge, individuals may come and go, but it's the institution that needs to survive. So I want to ask Dr. Tarakarta, the work that General Rawat started, whether it is theaterization of the various commands, whether it is integrated battle rooms, these are reforms that people both within the armed forces and outside have been talking about for a number of years now. And that work, let's face it, because of this tragic accident, is unfinished even today. Whoever his successor may be, what is going to be the challenge in finishing that unfinished work?
No, I think in this instance, it was a challenge. It was one of the chief issues which the CDS took on as Army Chief. This was one of his, by the way, his pet, ambitions to get through in the services. It was revolutionary, something huge that we are doing in terms of theaterization. So yes, it was pushed by the General Rawat, and it was backed by the political dispensation. But the thing is, the kind of opposition was expected from the services. After all, it was like I said, a very revolutionary move for us. But those are things which can be handled. We have many able officers. Why I'm saying this is because I'm sure you know about the gloating which you've seen on Global Times, which is the Chinese paper, saying that this is going to be, the end of this, and it shows the unpreparedness. I mean, where does unpreparedness come in? I don't understand. But their hope that this tragic accident will end our defense reforms is quite mistaken. We have many capable officers who will take this forward. Each person has a different style of doing things, and there's a whole Department of Military Affairs there to back them in this venture. And as you know, in government, all this goes on paper, it's on file, it goes on. Having said that, the CDS's strong personality made a lot of things possible, because he would push through, because this was there's something deep in his heart that he wanted this to go through. But nonetheless, the hopes of our enemies that our reform process will at all stall because of this is quite unfounded. It will go on as before, and as you yourself said, the services are known for going on no matter what. Whatever happens, they carry on with their work, and that's why we remain so proud of them.
Major General Dilawar saying one of the things that we've seen today is these tremendous scenes, I would say, ordinary people coming out into the streets of Coimbatore and Sulur and showering flower petals as this convoy of ambulances was flying past. Does that give you some amount of courage and relief that at a time, and let's face it, the external situation is not all that rosy. We're all aware of what's happening at the LAC with China. The LOC is also not any less, troublesome, as it were. But at a time of this great tragedy, as it were, ordinary people coming forth and showing us what unifies us. And the armed forces is one of the few things left in this country that brings us together. And a tragedy like this has brought us together. Are you hopeful that we'll be able to deal with this twin challenge, as it were, both on the northern side and on the western side, despite this terrible loss?
There is no doubt he was a people's general. He was very easily accessible. He used to easily communicate with people, listen to people, and try to solve the problems of everybody. He was a great source of inspiration and motivation. And the way he galvanized the three forces for the jointness and integration is known to all of us. The way he dealt with the situations in both North and West is also known to us. The way he speeded up the infrastructure so that we are able to move our forces onto the northern borders, especially against China, is known to us. There is no doubt he speeded up not only the infrastructure, but also the modernization, the indigenization, and a certain amount of military diplomacy and military leadership, which is unique. His qualities are indeed unique, and we have not yet seen such qualities in other people because he was the first Chief of Defense Staff. Having said that, I will also say that the armed forces are very seasoned forces now. We are the fourth largest armed forces in the world. We have very capable leaders. I'm sure they will try to match up, and they'll do their best to come up with the similar sort of leadership and push things as much as they can to unify the nation, to identify with every civilian, every citizen of the country, and unify the country and make sure that everybody has confidence in the armed forces as much as he did. And I'm very sure, confident that India remains united, India remains strong, especially the leadership is providing a lot of support, and things will go through. Yes, the loss is very tragic personally for me because he was a very dear friend, a guide, a brother, an elder brother, right from the time I met him first when I joined the Indian Military Academy, till just about 10 days ago when I met him last, when he shared some of his dreams, some which were on the way to completion, some which were yet to start. I'm sure they will all be taken up.
Okay, I also want to go across to Group Captain Amitabh Ranjan, who's flown in his service the Mi-17 series of choppers. All right, we'll go across to him in just 1 second. But let me go back to Lieutenant General Prasad. And I keep saying this, Lieutenant General Prasad. You're seeing, all kinds of conspiracy theories on the internet, comparisons to other crashes that have happened in the past as well. We don't want to speculate on any of it. We don't want to jump the gun on any of it. Ultimately, like I said, there's a very, very competent Air Marshal who will be looking at this. There's a code of inquiry that's been instituted. We will know at the end of that code of inquiry what is it that caused this accident. But just to take things forward, and what I was discussing with Professor Tarakarta as well, this is a delicate time for us. We know the situation along the LAC. We know the situation along the LOC. How does one tread this twin challenge given this terrible tragedy and given that General Rawat, who is effectively the head of the defense forces in this country, is no longer there?
Well, Zaka, that is a serious issue, and that's a serious thing that the government of India has to contend with. But I want to assure you that there is always adequate competence, good competence available to be able to put into the shoes of what the previous man has gone and done. Yes, he did a great job. He was on the threshold of accomplishing the task that he had undertaken. The last time when I discussed this matter with him, he categorically mentioned that he has been given instructions by the Prime Minister that during his tenure he must get the theatre commands ready, he must institute the battle groups concept, and he must make sure that the three services unite together for a common challenge. He's been working on it for 2 years. The task is still to be accomplished. There are a lot of complications in it. There are a lot of things that need to be sorted out in this matter. But having said that, we have sufficient people available, not only in the Army, Navy or the Air Force, but even in the junior, I mean the service chiefs, but even others who can fill this job. The path to making jointness a primary issue, to make these theatre commands, is very much there available. It's only a matter of carrying it forward. It's something like you've reached some 3/4 or 1/4 or whatever 2/4 of the path that you're taking. Just another few meters are left, and you can accomplish. But at the same time, the criticalities of the security environment in the country today is such that we have problems on the western border, we have problems on the northwestern borders, we have trouble in northeast, we have insurgency, we have all kinds of problems, security problems that the government has got today. Therefore, the overall response of the security apparatus of the nation, which is spearheaded by the CDS, needs to be very carefully orchestrated.
Okay.
While this the thing will go on, but what is more important is this, that the person who takes over charge of the new CDS has to be one person who's able to get along, if that's the best word I can use, with the bureaucracy of the government, with the political leadership, with the other service chiefs, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the Ministry of Home, and all of that. Because it's going to be something that has to be put together, and all of it has to make one national power. So there's a beautiful example I can give you of how Doklam happened. Doklam, if you recall, General Rawat was the chief of the army staff. He must have played a major role in making sure that the Chinese are not able to do anything much. The Chinese brought X number of troops there. We were able to bring matching troops there. Then the entire machinery of the government, whether it was the military, which is Army, Navy and the Air Force, whether it was the foreign ministry, whether it is the political leadership, whether it is the domestic dispensation, all of it as a national power made sure that the Chinese were not able to stand there any longer and had to withdraw without having to fire a single round. Similar situation has happened in Ladakh. If you remember, we had just about 1 division worth of troops in Ladakh when the conflict started, and in no time, with the CDS available there, the Army, Navy and the Air Force efforts were all put together, and we were able to induct in yet another division, perhaps more. And the point is that if the Chinese could bring in 90,000 troops, we had 90,000 troops as well. If they brought tanks, we had tanks there. If they brought artillery guns, we had guns there. So what happened? It was a collective effort of the Air Force, of the Army, of all the logistic establishments of the country that we were able to build it up. Therefore, that is the kind of task the CDS does. And CDS can continue to do that if whoever gets appointed by the government.
Marshal Ahluwalia, just to take things forward, I mean, we are in fairly uncharted territory in as much as General Rawat was the first CDS, and all of the previous speakers have talked about how passionate he was about the theatre commands, about integrated battle rooms, and it was almost like a personal project for him that he wanted to see through. Whoever the next person is, what are the qualities that the political leadership needs to look at for such an appointee? Because let's face it, I mean, when there is, let's say, a calamity strikes any one of the service chiefs, God forbid, there is a very well